Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're taking a deep dive into orchestral music.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm excited about this one. We're looking at excerpts from a podcast episode. It was called The Majestic World of Orchestral Music.
Okay.
And we're going to cover a lot of ground, from its origins and how it evolved over the centuries to what might be in store for the future.
It's funny. When you think of orchestral music, you think of these grand concert halls, these huge ensembles.
Right, yeah.
But it's interesting to remember that it all started in much smaller settings, almost like little get-togethers of musicians.
Huh. It's kind of like picturing a tiny seed that eventually grows into this, massive oak tree, right?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
So let's talk about that seed. We're in the 17th century, the Baroque period, right?
Right.
What was it about that era that kind of set the stage for orchestral music to just explode?
Well, the Baroque period was really a time of, just wild experimentation.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Composers like Claudio Monteverdi, they were just pushing the limits of what you could do with music. They were making the ensembles bigger, writing more complex stuff. But it wasn't just, adding more notes for the sake of it. What's important is they were building these foundational structures, musical forms like the concerto and the suite, that would really shape orchestral music going forward.
So it wasn't just about getting louder. It was about the actual, architecture of the music itself.
Exactly, yeah.
So, okay, we've got this foundation, but, music never stands still, right? What were some of those, big shifts as orchestral music kind of moved through different periods?
Well, look at the classical period. You've got Mozart, Haydn, those guys.
Yeah.
It was all about this, clarity and balance. A very different feel from the Baroque period.
Okay.
It's almost like comparing, a super ornate cathedral to, a perfectly symmetrical Greek temple. They're both beautiful, but in totally different ways.
Right. That's a really good analogy. Okay, so we go from that, over-the-top Baroque thing to this elegant classical period. What comes after that? What's next on our timeline?
Then we get to the Romantics.
Yeah.
And this is where it gets really juicy. I mean, think Tchaikovsky, Brahms, Mahler. These guys were all about emotion, drama, pushing the boundaries of expression.
Okay.
Even the orchestras themselves grew in size. The music became more lush, more intense.
So if the classical period was all about, holding back, this was about just letting loose.
Exactly. It's like if you listen to Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake, it's more than just ballet music.
Yeah.
It's like a story being told through the instruments. You can hear the yearning, the heartbreak, even moments of triumph, all woven into the music. It's incredibly powerful the way they could evoke these feelings.
It's kind of like they were making film scores before films are even a thing.
That's a great point. They really were painting pictures with sound.
Yeah.
Tapping into that whole spectrum of human emotion.
Okay, so we've gone from Baroque to classical to Romantic. What happens as we move into the 20th and 21st centuries? How does orchestral music change in a modern world?
That's where things get really interesting, because you see this blend of the old and the new.
Yeah.
Composers like Stravinsky, Shostakovich, they were pushing the boundaries of what orchestral music could even sound like, experimenting with dissonance, rhythm, totally new combinations of instruments.
So they didn't abandon the orchestra, they just reinvented it.
Exactly. I mean, take Stravinsky's Rite of Spring. This was back in 1913, and when it premiered, it caused an actual riot.
Whoa!
Yeah, the audience was just not ready for it. The music was so jarring, so different from anything they'd ever heard. It was almost primitive in its energy.
So he was like, hey, the orchestra can do this too.
Exactly. And then you have composers like Shostakovich, who reflected a lot of the turmoil of the 20th century in their music.
Okay.
Yeah, his symphonies are incredibly powerful. They're full of this darkness and struggle, but also these moments of real beauty and hope.
So it's still about expressing the human experience just through a different lens.
Yeah, for sure.
And of course, you can't talk about orchestral music today without mentioning film scores, right?
Absolutely. Composers like John Williams, they've introduced orchestral music to a whole new generation through films.
Yeah.
I mean, think about Star Wars, Jaws, E.T., these iconic scores that everyone knows. They've shown millions of people the power of the orchestra, maybe without them even realizing it.
It's true. I mean, for a lot of people, their first experience with orchestral music wasn't in a concert hall. It was in a movie theater.
That's a really good point.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
Yeah. It says a lot about how powerful orchestral music is, to connect with people on this emotional level, no matter where they hear it. But to really get how it does that, we need to look at the orchestra itself, like how it's all put together.
Okay, let's do that.
Yeah,
It's like
right.
this incredible machine with all these different parts. But how do they work together to make this, unified sound?
Well, it really is like a living, breathing thing, you know?
Yeah.
You've got the strings, they're kind of the heart of it all.
Okay.
Violins, violas, cellos, double basses, they all work together to create this foundation of sound. It's really amazing.
And then you've got the woodwinds. It's like they add this breath, this color to the music, right?
Absolutely.
Flutes, oboes, clarinets, bassoons. Each one has such a unique sound, you know?
But yeah, they each have their own personality.
Totally.
And then, of course, you have the brass. The brass is like the powerful voice of the orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
Trumpets, trombones, horns, tubas, all bringing this weight and grandeur.
It's so powerful.
It is. It is. And then you've got percussion, kind of the backbone, keeping the rhythm going.
Right.
Everything from timpani to cymbals to all sorts of drums and other instruments, too. It's really a whole world in itself.
It's amazing. It's like all these different sections, each with their own sound, their own world, but somehow it all comes together, like a conversation almost.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. And what's really cool is how composers have used these different sections to create specific effects.
Oh, like what?
What, like how the strings might be used to create a sense of longing or sadness, or how the brass could signal a moment of, like, victory. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. It's like they're painting, but with sound.
Exactly. Using all these different colors and textures to create different emotions, different moods. And then, of course, you have the conductor, the maestro.
The one who keeps it all together.
Right, right. But they're not just keeping time, they're interpreting the music, bringing their own vision to it.
So they're like a storyteller, too, in a way.
Exactly. A good conductor can make a huge difference in how the orchestra sounds.
Wow.
They can inspire the musicians, get them to play with real passion, and they can help the audience connect with the music in a deeper way. It's a real art.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about, the history of orchestral music, how it's evolved. But what about the future? What's on the horizon?
Well, one of the really exciting trends is that we're seeing all these new composers who are blending classical traditions with influences from other genres.
Oh, really? Like what?
Think jazz, electronic music, world music, you name it. It's really shaking things up.
It's like they're expanding the vocabulary of the orchestra, right? Adding all these new flavors to the mix.
That's exactly what it is. And they're not just like borrowing from other genres. They're creating something totally new and fresh. It's really cool.
That's awesome. And of course, we can't forget about technology, how it's changing everything.
Oh, yeah, that's a huge factor. I mean, just think about digital platforms. They've made orchestral music way more accessible. You can stream concerts from all over the world. You can listen to recordings whenever you want.
Yeah.
And then there's virtual reality, augmented reality. Those are really starting to change how we experience concerts.
It's mind-blowing, right? Like imagine putting on a VR headset and suddenly you're right in the middle of the orchestra.
Yeah. Or imagine going to a concert where the visuals are like enhanced with augmented reality, like making it this immersive experience. It's crazy to think about what's possible.
It's amazing. But even with all this new technology, we still need to remember where it all came from, right?
Yeah.
Like preserving the traditions of orchestral music.
Absolutely. That's essential. Yeah. Things like archiving scores, recording performances, making sure that this whole musical legacy is passed down.
It's like building a bridge from the past to the future,
Yeah, I like that. And it's happening all over the world, too. There are all these dedicated archives, festivals, educational programs, keeping this art form alive.
And it's not just about the music itself, right? It's about getting young people excited about it, too.
Absolutely. That's where the future lies.
Yeah.
All these youth orchestras, music programs, they're planting the seeds for the next generation of musicians and fans.
It's really inspiring to see that, to see how orchestral music is always changing, always evolving. But with all these new influences, all this technology, it makes you wonder, like, what will it even sound like 100 years from now? Will it even be, like, recognizable as the same thing?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
It's hard to say for sure. I mean, who knows what the future holds?
Right.
But, I think one thing's for certain. Orchestral music, it's going to keep changing. It has to. It always has.
Yeah, to stay alive, right. Think about how much it's changed already since, those little chamber groups back in the day.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so exciting, It's not some dusty old museum piece. It's alive. It's always drawing on new ideas, new sounds, new technology.
So what might those, future influences look like? Any guesses?
Well, I think we're going to see even more blurring of the lines between genres.
Yeah.
Like, we're already seeing it now with composers bringing in elements of jazz and electronic music, world music, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And as technology keeps advancing, who knows what kind of new sonic possibilities will come up. It's really exciting to think about.
Right. Like imagine an orchestra that's not just like violins and trumpets, but also has synthesizers or even sounds generated by AI, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Or imagine concerts that are like totally immersive experiences using virtual reality and augmented reality, all that stuff. It can be mind-blowing.
It's pretty wild to think about. But, for people who are maybe feeling a little intimidated by all this talk about the future of music, what advice would you give them? Like, how can we appreciate orchestral music right now, today?
I think the biggest thing is just to listen with an open mind. Don't overthink it. Don't worry if you don't understand every little thing.
Yeah.
Just let the music wash over you and see how it makes you feel.
That's good advice. It's easy to get caught up in, like, the technical side of things, but really it's about the feeling, right?
Exactly. And, there are so many ways to experience orchestral music these days.
Yeah.
I mean, going to a live concert, that's always amazing. There's nothing quite like being in a concert hall, feeling the energy of the orchestra live.
It's true. It's totally different.
But even if you can't make it to a concert, there are tons of recordings out there, online, at the library. Just explore. Listen to different composers, different periods, different styles.
Yeah. Branch out. Right.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to try something new. You might be surprised at what you discover.
That's really what this whole deep dive has been about, just like uncovering the beauty of orchestral music, how rich and deep it is.
It really has been a journey.
Yeah.
From those early chamber groups to the big concert halls we have today, and then looking ahead to all the possibilities of the future, it's been amazing.
We've covered a lot of ground, that's for sure. We talked about the different eras of orchestral music, all the instruments that make up the orchestra, what the conductor does, how technology is changing things. It's been a lot.
And we've seen how, even with all these changes, orchestral music still has this incredible power to move us, to inspire us, It's really something special.
So as we wrap things up here, I want to leave you with one last thought.
Don't just listen to orchestral music. Experience it.
Let it transport you. Let it challenge you. Let it move you. And hey, you never know. Maybe it'll even inspire you to create something beautiful yourself.
That's a great way to put it.
So, thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of orchestral music. Until next time, keep listening, keep exploring, and keep the music playing.